Hello. Welcome to the East Bay Center for Anxiety Relief Collective Studio. Today we're going to have a podcast with our host, Alan Choi, who's a licensed social worker, and his guest. These podcasts run every 2 to 3 months. Please look at our website, eastbayanxiety.com, for future podcasts. And now, Alan and his guest.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Rose. Hello,
Hi.
audience.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Alan Choi, and welcome. This is the second of our conversation series here at the East Bay Center for Anxiety Relief. And again, my name is Alan Choi. I'm a therapist and also the co-founder of the East Bay Center for Teen and Family Therapy. And I'm also a therapist and member of the East Bay Center for Anxiety Relief Collective, of which both myself and our guest today, Rose Markotic, is a member. So first things first, got to go back to doing a disclaimer. Our goal today is to provide really thoughtful and useful tips that can help people who are listening or watching this sort of improve their everyday lives. This is not a substitute for therapy. I know that people are pretty complex. There are a lot of things going on in people's lives, and it's hard to try to work on all of that through just some listening to a webcast. And so hopefully this will be helpful. But, if this gives you inspiration for getting more professional help, great. We've done our job. So anyways, let's get to our subject for today. Today we're going to be talking about habits and addictions, and we have an expert here, Rose Markotic, who is a marriage and family therapist and very experienced in cognitive behavioral therapy and working on habits and addictions. Rose, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been practicing, a good 8 years, more or less. My previous experiences were working in the school-based system, so I have a lot of experience in working with kids and families and teens. And I currently run a private practice. My practice is located in Berkeley, California, where I also see teens, families, and young adults. Most of the people I work with are age 13 in their 20s, so middle school, high school, college. I love that population.
Uh-huh.
And as you mentioned, I use CBT. I use a really specific type of CBT, team CBT, in my practice, and I found that's been really helpful in teaching my clients different skills and tools to improve their lives or just kind of reach some goals that they have for themselves.
Okay. And actually, I don't know, I hear team CBT, some people say it's for the teamwork, we all do it together. But it is a specialized type of CBT and is it can be very powerful and very effective. Would you like to just describe it just a little bit, since this is one of the things that you do specialize in?
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, so Team CBT is founded by Dr. David Burns. He's a professor out of Stanford. He's the author of the books Feeling Good, which was one of the best-selling self-help books in the 90s, and he's had some more recent editions. But what this is all about is it's kind of like CBT on steroids. We pull from a lot of different therapeutic fields, and this is a school of therapy. We're working with tools. And the team is the acronym kind of structures, or it talks about the structure we would follow in therapy. The T is the testing. So I'm using measures in the practice that's informing us if we're moving in the right direction or not. E is the empathy. We're working on making sure the relationship is solid, that I'm understanding my clients before we're moving into any change. The A is the assessment of resistance. And that's I think, a key piece here is that we often come into therapy thinking we want help with something, but we also have ambivalence about change. Change takes hard work, and change means we have to do some things we may not be ready to do or wanting to do. So we work through some of that, which we will talk about here today in our topic. And then M is method. Once we kind of move through that process, we move into the change part where we are working on methods to actively change, whether it's thoughts or habits or whatever. Yeah.
That was a really good summary. I mean, I have been also trained in team CBT, and I think one of the things I really like about it is that sometimes with therapy, you hear people say that there's no change or we just keep talking, nothing happens. And with Team CBT and what you practice and I know you're really good at, you get to identify measures, you get to test, and you see like, hey, what are some signs that we are making progress? That way it feels like, hey, we are doing something, even though it might not seem like it day to day. But if you look at some measures, you identify like things that you look at, there probably often is change that you don't notice, and that can be really powerful.
It's true. It's true. Absolutely. You're totally right. Yeah.
So, question for you. So
Mhm.
we are going to be digging in and trying to get your expertise. Really want to understand what got you into this work in the first place, either in habits and addictions uh, or therapy.
Good question. So I had my own experiences with depression and anxiety as a teenager and had good experiences in therapy and not so good experiences in therapy. And kind of later in life, I found I worked with a really great cognitive behavioral therapist where I learned a lot of different tools, communication tools that for me kind of transformed my life. And so, and it's kind of ironic that the times that were the hardest for me were my teenage years, and that's kind of where I find the most joy and passion is working with the youth, teenagers. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of what drove me here to, I found some tools that were really helpful, and then I realized, in our society and our school systems, or at least when I was growing up, we're not always taught some of the skills of emotional intelligence or awareness, and or even communication tools. And so I
Yeah.
thought, this is amazing, and what better time to learn these kind of tools earlier on in life when we're kind of starting out and recognizing some of these things and patterns. And so that's kind of what led me into this field. And I've been doing it since 2015. Yeah.
Oh,
Before then, but yeah. Grad
yes.
school. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think that's beautiful. Especially, I work with teens too, and that's why I work with teens. Is because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes painful experiences are in our childhood and our teenage years, yet in the school system. Oh my God, this is
Mm-hmm.
not a. I'm going to get my soapbox for just a little bit. In our school system, there's so much that's emphasized, like reading, writing,
Academic.
math,
Yep.
testing, academics, right?
Yeah.
And at the
Yeah.
same time, all this, emotional support and understanding our human needs for connection and
Absolutely.
emotional, even emotional vocabulary, which a lot of people don't have. You don't get any of that, and so it's important, essential that people can get that. And
Yep.
so I'm glad that
Yeah.
you're doing the work you're doing.
Yeah, I want to put one more plug too. I'm also a mother of two young boys, and I find that seeing and working with teams keeps me humble and keeps me kind of connected to what's going on with youth. And it helps me, I'd like to think it helps me be a better parent, or at least it helps remind me to tune in and empathize with my children and kind of understand some of the roadblocks that, I might get caught up into as a parent too. So,
Oh, absolutely. Hey, the fact that you can see that and try to empathize, that already gives you a huge leg up.
yeah.
A lot of kids that we work with oftentimes complain about their parents not listening, not understanding, or just they even give up. And so
Hmm.
the fact that it's on your radar, I'm sure you are very
As are you. I heard you're like master skill at Lego, so we have to hear about that
good.
with your
Over
son.
sometime while play date.
Yeah, why not?
All right, so let's get to our topic of the day: habits and addictions. Actually, let's start with that. Like, what in general are we talking about when we're talking about habits and addictions? Like, what do you work with? What have you seen?
Sure, sure. So when we use the term habits, we're loosely, we're talking about the behaviors we are engaging in kind of daily. And sometimes, or most of the time, these are sort of automatic. We engage in a lot of rituals or it's repeated habits and behaviors. We have tons of them, embedded in our daily lives, our morning routines, getting up, making breakfast, coffee, brushing teeth, getting dressed, walking out the door, bedtime routines, work routines, workout routines, social routines, all of those things. Um, and so when we're speaking of habits, and in how I intersect with this in my work is because I work with teens and youth and young adults. When we are focusing on habits, I tend to find that becomes a place of focus for teens or for my clients when they're running into some issues, or they want to make some revisions in some of their habits or their routines. And what I really see kind of more coming up frequently is like procrastination. That tends to be one of the most common types of habits we focus on. And then any human that is breathing and living can say we've all procrastinated on something or so forth in life. And so, yeah, I see that happening a lot with teens and kind of procrastination on doing homework for school, or even,
Homework. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, really, yeah, really, yeah. Or even like self-care habits, procrastination on that, or wanting to shift habits that maybe they're spending too much time on screens or social media or bedtime routines or getting to bed too late, whatever, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it's important to talk about habits, because I kind of view a lot of the behaviors we're doing, they're all kind of routine driven, but if we are emphasizing or putting intention and focus on a specific area, a lot of these small habits can kind of compound into larger changes over time, right? Changes or, intentions moving towards our values and our goals. And so they are important. And we engage in habits daily, and they're, not necessarily positive, negative, or, somewhat neutral, but it's kind of nice sometimes when we want to focus in on an area and make some adjustments and tweaks, and um, to move in a direction that's meaningful. So,
Yeah, and I really like that point that you made about how, yeah, we can call them routines and we can even recognize that they're habits that are not so good for us. And it sounds like one of the things that is important about working on these is that sometimes these rituals or routines or habits, they end up compounding. And when they compound, I imagine that they take over our lives, or they can really take away from what we really want to do. Is that sort of what you see and why it's important to work on this?
yeah, and it can go both ways. The inverse, we can compound many small habits that are connected to our values, like, for example, health values, right? If I want to just kind of practice healthy eating habits daily, over time, that's,
Mm,
the net effect is like our health, our bodies, we're taking care of ourselves. We're connecting to those values of maybe health and wellness. And then on the flip side, we could be engaging in other habits that might feel not so helpful or to detriment to our health, or just might be it might be developing into some other kind of problem. I'm falling behind in school because I'm, prioritizing, YouTube time or this or that versus doing my homework, those kind of things. Yeah.
that's a really good. Can I just applaud you for identifying just the inverse too? Like, we think of, especially in the new year, sometimes we were like, I want to lose weight. I've got to stop eating
Yeah.
less sugar, or
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
to exercise more. I need to stop watching as much TV.
Oh my
All these
gosh.
things
Yeah.
can, it sounds negative. After a while, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Like we're
And I
policing
love
ourselves. Yeah.
exactly. And I love how you identify that this could really be a positive thing, not just because we don't do the negative thing, but because these
Yeah.
positive things can really build. Like, we can be building good habits that make our lives happier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would even kind of add in here, like moving away from this language of judgment, bad habits, good habits, because our behaviors are driven by our values, right?
Mm,
Even if we are engaging in something, if we're maybe overdoing it over time, it's still connected to a place that's genuinely positive, right? Maybe we're on social media because we want to connect. Maybe we're doing that because we just kind of need some downtime. Like it's not necessarily good or bad. It's kind of, I think, the numbers, right? The balance around that. So but yeah, like we can get in our culture and in our society get caught up in labeling it as bad or good or whatever, that type of thing. So it's
well,
just not
nothing
as
wrong with that.
helpful.
And actually, so you're going to help us with that today and help me with that today.
Hmm.
And actually, before we start on how we start doing this,
Hmm.
it's very interesting. Every year, especially during this time, there is this phenomenon that we are making changes in everything. And one of the questions I want to ask you, as the expert in one of these in these things, is why is this happening in the first place? Why it seems like we are constantly trying to battle some level of addiction, whether serious or less serious, and every day. Is there, what's happening with us that is sort of causing us to feel the need to change and be caught up in these things?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I could start with the conversation around the biology in our brain and how we are kind of hardwired to pursue the most, the route of least resistance. We are wired to sort of pursue more of immediate gratification. So we have the mesolimbic pathway system in our brains, which is our dopamine kind of place where we release dopamine in our brain. And so as human beings, our behaviors are to some degree, from when we look at our early ancestors, driven by survival, right? And so when we do something that gives us a reward or some pleasure, it releases dopamine, and it's your brain's way of learning, oh, I like that, and I'm going to do it again. And a lot of things give us that dopamine release really quickly. Like, for example, food. When a baby's hungry and it's crying, it's tired, you feed it, it's happy, it stops crying, right? Because it suddenly gets that need met. And a lot of different things can connect and release dopamine, and things that we're doing kind of day to day, like I mentioned, eating or engaging in pleasurable activities like hobbies, and playing the guitar instrument, or listening to music, or exercising, or even social interactions, and sex, and any of our basic needs. So really, we're driven to pursue those types of things, right? The problem is, though, I think, though, that our society, or the way we're structured in the world today, is a lot of the things that we're working towards are more delayed gratification. So for example, if you're getting up and going to work every day, you're probably putting in 8 hours or so, right? But you're not getting paid that same day, right? You go to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? And after how many days you get your paycheck? Or kind of what I say with teens is, what comes up a lot is, schools, again, part of that system of more delayed rewards, right? You go to school, you go to class, you don't get your grade right away, you don't get a degree right away. It takes days into months and semesters and years, and finally we walk away with a degree or so forth. So it's kind of set up for, I don't know, I don't want to say failure, but it sets us up for some traps or some kind of struggles, right? Because it does require us to say no, right? And kind of delay that instant gratification, make choices for that longer term gratification that, requires more self control, or focusing on our values, and, and like just basic habits like what we're talking about here today.
Okay, let me rewind because you just gave a lot of
I
information.
know, I know.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and I'm just gonna dumb it down for people out there
Thank
and for
you. Yes.
myself,
Yes.
is are you saying that we're all dope addicts? And essentially, what we have to do in our daily lives is that because some of the stuff that we need to do, we're not going to get our our dopamine rush. That then we
Totally.
suffer from some level of withdrawal. It doesn't feel good, and because
Yes.
we want that dopamine rush,
Yes. Right
and
away. Yes.
okay, so we are dope addicts, but in a natural way. Like
Yes.
as you were
Yep.
saying, like a baby when they want food and they're crying, and when you feed them or you comfort them, is it like the feeling of satisfaction that that's sort of like how the dopamine feels to us? Like, oh, after you eat, you're like, oh, that feels good. Is that sort of
Yes.
what it is?
Yes, that's essentially what it is. The dopamine is like the happy hormone, or it's let's do this again. This feels really good. It also reduces the cortisol and the stress hormone, because like right when the baby's crying, he or she's hungry and just really in distress, that suddenly takes away the distress and brings on positive emotions, or positive, pleasurable experiences, right? It takes the discomfort away. So there's a few things going on here, right? Or even like when we're kind of stressed out and then suddenly we start scrolling and, oh, wow, I'm not so anxious about what I was thinking about. Same kind of idea.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful. And actually, we should, I don't believe in stigmatization of anything. And I think what I'm hearing is, well, we know this too. Dopamine is a natural
Hmm.
hormone in us, and it's natural
Hmm.
to want it. It's a happy hormone. And at the same time, we can't always get the happy hormone. And that's sort of in society, especially if we are trying to work on school, work on degrees, work on our careers, we can't always get instant gratification. And so therein sort of lies like almost the rub, right? We want that
Yep,
instant gratification and we're wired for it. And at the same time, we're not getting it. So we're sort of in a hard
absolutely.
position.
Absolutely. You're pointing out a really good point here.
Okay, so well, what are we supposed to do then? So we all have our habits and addictions, and we do want the dopamine. And I know I want the dopamine a lot, uh, in certain senses, of course. And well, I don't know. What do we?
How do we overcome it? What are the
Can we
challenges?
overcome it? It sounds like it's wired. It's biological. What? I don't know. Is there hope?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is not necessarily an either or scenario. We're going to keep that, right? Because that's what keeps us alive. We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need these things to function, connections, social connections, all of that. Those are good. When it comes down to like, how do we overcome it? I mean, I think this is where we're talking about moving to those smaller habits, like starting with our habits, our behaviors, right? So, in the example of school, right? And, there's a longer term process in there, starting with the more basic habits, our study habits, our self-care habits, building on those types of things. And there's a lot of different strategies and tools we can use to kind of get going on a behavior we might be kind of slacking off on or procrastinating on, maintaining it. Um, and but there's also, like, you're kind of pointing out some easy traps we can fall into, to sort of not follow through or even not start up on certain things too. And so,
Okay.
yeah.
So there's a lot there. We do have hope. It sounds like there's a lot that obviously you do. You help people build smaller habits. You help identify or create tools that work for people that they can build on to help establish habits and maybe to withhold on the habits that we want to sort of stop. And also identifying traps. So there's definitely a lot of things that you can do. And actually, I wonder if this is a good time that we can move into a little bit of an example to make this a
Sure.
little bit more concrete.
Sure.
And my way of getting some free therapy, because therapy is expensive or can be expensive. So you are going to give me
Mm-hmm.
free therapy today. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Go for it.
Okay, and I understand that you are not my therapist. This is not therapy. Let me
No.
redisclaim on
No.
myself that this, even me receiving anything from you, is not therapy. So I will
Mm-hmm.
not be holding you responsible. So feel free to share away as you want.
Okay.
So, well, I guess in our preparation for this, we did sort of identify what we could work on, at least for me, just to make it a little bit more, uh, concrete for people as they're trying to maybe change up their habits, establish new habits that they want, and trying to cease old habits. My habit, and I've done this since I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I do want to slow down on this. I mean, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
still working this out, so maybe you can work this out with me.
Sure.
Is I do a lot of online shopping, and specifically, it's not even just online shopping. It's online deal hunting. I like the deals. I like getting good deals. It makes me feel good. There's a carrot dangling in front of me, and I want to grab it, grab it, grab it. And what do I do? Help me.
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. And there we are, the dopamine hit, right? Like immediate gratification. Oh, I suddenly scored the best deal. I got this really cool, helmet on Amazon, right? For my son, whatever. So,
Yeah.
but tell me a bit more about this and why is it problematic? Because, like I said, we were talking about earlier, that, habits are just, you can kind of look at them as neutral. We're kind of the ones that kind of make more of the classification. This is bad or good or positive or negative. I hear you do a lot of online shopping and deal hunting. Why would you want it? What about this? Well, first of all, what's going on? What are you doing? How much are you kind of online shopping and deal hunting? And when are you doing this? And are you doing this with anyone else, like connected, family member or something, or helping others? Or just tell me a bit more about this behavior before we go and change it.
Okay. Well, I would say don't tell my husband, but honestly, he already knows about all this stuff. So
He's
don't
probably
tell my kid, but he
connected to
also
your
knows.
Amazon
I know it's
because
terrible.
they see the packages, right? They live
Oh,
with
they
you.
see the packages and they see what I'm doing on my free
Okay.
time. So here's the deal. I think as long as I can recall, always I was like shopping in my family as a kid used to be one of the activities on the weekend, and I think part of that's cultural. I know that in my family's from Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, a lot of people. It's a small city with a lot of people, so people tend to go out, and there are a lot of stores. So it's about being out there, being in the community, and through commercialism. And as far as I can remember, that's always been an activity. So I can't even recall when it first started. And at the same time, I know that I am always constantly on the hunt for something. All I need is a reason or an identified need, or someone can identify need uh, for me to deal hunt, and I will go. I'm a bloodhound. I will find that deal and find the best deal and still have a good quality product to come out of it. So yeah, I have always been doing it. I do it in my free time. I know it's a problem sometimes because I'm really busy now. I have my own business like you. I'm a private therapist. I love what I do. It takes a lot of time if you want to do it well. And I'm also a dad. also a husband. I also take care of my family. I have a dog. I have other interests. And yet this hobby or habit seems to be taking up a lot of my life. A lot more than
Makes a lot of sense. I love what you're sharing here. I mean, it seems like you're the kind of person I would want on my side if I had any kind of need or had needed to buy any kind of specific product. You are like the bloodhound of shopping. You will find and sniff out the best deals. And I kind of love that. And I like how you're kind of making a really strong point here. You're actually maybe even making the connection to some of the values that there's this almost kind of, you were saying, growing up in Hong Kong and maybe even kind of part of the cultural aspects of like getting together, leaving and going out in public and walking around shops, shopping, going out to eat, doing things like that. Not only you engaging in the shopping, but you're connecting with others. And so this has kind of been a part of your habits or experience for a while now. I'm just looking
yeah.
at my notes of what you said. But then it sounds like the downfall here is when it's now kind of taken a lot of your time. And that's where the hiccup comes in for you. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, yes, all that. It does take up time. And I could be doing other
Mm-hmm.
things. And yet, even when I have other things to do sometimes, I have that itch. I'm like, oh, I have this in the back of
Yeah.
my head. I'm supposed to look for
Yeah.
this. So
Yes.
it's very justified, but it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like I have full control.
Totally. No, it's that itch, and your brain is a problem solving machine, so it likes that completion, the closure, right? If you have this thing dangling, you need to buy it, or it's kind of on your mind, you kind of want to shop, right? And it feels good when you find the right deal and you secure it, and you know that there's something coming in mail for you or somebody. So I think all this is biologically driven. It makes a lot of sense. And so, given this is something you're saying you want to change and shift, what would that look like for you? Right? Because I want to understand first what you would want to change. Like, and you have a couple options here. Like, there's the option of
Many
give it
of
up.
what I could change. And it
Okay.
sounds like what are we doing here? Actually, just so that our viewers or
Oh, yeah.
listeners can understand like what we're doing. I know,
Yes.
we're not deep diving into Alan's life. I know that you are professionally doing something, so maybe take
Yeah.
us through sort of what we're doing.
Sure. Sure. Good question. Where we're at right now is, well, we're kind of exploring the situation and we're at the specificity step to understanding, well, what is going on? What is happening? What is the behavior? When is it happening? How much is it happening? How frequently? The duration, getting all of that in the context, even the situation. Is this at home? Is this in like the office? And it sounds kind of like this kind of trickles in different times of your day. And we're collecting that information because that's important. I need to understand the what before we go and establish any kind of direction of what you want to change.
Okay.
Um, am I making sense? So we start with specificity before we move into the next part, which is the motivational assessment, right? Because so in order to change our habits, we have to have a lot of discipline. We're gonna have to say no to something, and we're gonna have to go through that deprivation, right? So we do need a higher level of motivation and buy-in before we start. And that's sort of like the traps we tend to fall into sometimes. We're not maybe fully on board with the goal, right? Like you had said, oh, I need to, lose weight. I need to eat healthier. And it's just kind of starts off kind of setting ourselves up, already for a difficult kind of journey. So what we're doing here is just exploring more what's going on and then moving into, okay, would you really want to change this? Because you're getting a lot out of it.
Wow. Okay, that is helpful. And yes, I mean, yeah, let's get to our motivational assessment. And right now, as you said, motivational assessment, like my gut just sort of dropped a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, I am taking this seriously. This is not just so that we can talk about this and record this. I do want to change it. Honestly, I have thought about it a lot. I've even put in the past. I've talked to my kid about it because I am one of my motivations is actually to be a better dad because I know that in life, especially nowadays, there's so many addictions and screen addictions, and this is all tied together, right? Online shopping, all this. There's a screen, and these screens are so addictive. And I want to try to be a good model because if I can't do it, then well, I can't expect my kid to do it. And
Right.
so I do want to be better. I don't know if I want to give up the habit altogether
Right.
uh,
Right.
because there is some utility to it. I do find stuff, and I wouldn't want to give up everything, but at the same time, at the rate I'm currently doing it, I don't have enough time in the day, and I know that I am happier when I can sort of, as you said, suspend, deprive myself a little bit of all the times I'm itchy, and be able to really be engaged in what I'm doing. And hopefully what I'm doing at the time, and I can be more engaged, is to be with my family more, enjoy my time with my husband, and do fun things with my kid and my dog and my mom and my siblings, everything, and not just looking at the screen and looking for the next deal.
Yeah.
I
I love
wonder
what
if
you're
you
saying. Yeah, you've kind of already leaped through the motivational steps, so I'm going to back you up a little bit. You told me you're kind of arguing for change, which I love. I mean, I love what you're saying, that you want to be a better dad. You want to kind of cut down on this, that, giving it up completely, abstinence, right? That's a choice. It's just not the choice you'd like, because we also do need things, right? Sometimes things break and so forth, but you want to do this to be a good role model for your son, and be more present in your interactions with your loved ones, your family members, and your dog, and just to be more present, right? And so reduce some of the time you're spending on online shopping. I love all what you're saying, but before we dive into this, I'm gonna, if you're a listener here and you really want to get more out of this experience and understand this better, I would encourage you to take a piece of paper, just write 3 columns. Just, draw 2 lines to make 3 columns, right? You're going to label the first column on the left the advantages, right? The advantages are the benefits of what you're currently doing, the status quo, not the advantages of changing it, like, right, reducing your online shopping. What are some of the benefits you're getting from online shopping, right? That's the first column. The third column are what are the values this connects with, right? Because, like I mentioned earlier, our behaviors are driven by our values, right? So even if we're calling it a bad habit, they really do come from a solid place that we really can connect with, right? So you kind of did a little bit of this for, in preparation for today. Can you tell me about some of those points, and our readers, our viewers, if you would like to kind of try this out, pick a habit, look at something you're currently doing and identify some of these things. So what are some good reasons, to keep online shopping?
Let me do the work here, a piece of paper,
Yeah.
into 3 columns. And actually, as I'm doing this, and as you're taking me through this,
Yeah.
I definitely want to identify a little bit of just, first of all, time management here. We only have about 10 minutes left. And I think what we're doing is, realistically, this is what we would do, and that what you would do in therapy over many sessions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I here's what I'm saying. We're going to need to continue this, and maybe this is where we lead off today is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the motivational assessment, and
Mm-hmm.
really making a decision of, like, you know, once we've understood the problem, deciding whether we do want to change and why we
Mm-hmm.
want to change. And maybe we can hold it there, because even this is probably going to be a lot for people to think about.
It's true.
Can't get to the
It's totally
change.
true.
So
It's
we're
totally
going to hold off here today, uh, after we go through this, of course. And then we are going to have to continue on with the rest of what you can help me and our watchers and listeners on, with the part 2 on how to make this happen. But I think
sure.
the first step is getting to, like, let's try to vision out and make sure that we do want to do this.
Yeah. Like
Oh,
your decision
timer.
making. Time's
Okay.
up. Yeah.
So so I guess we're starting off with, can you take us through the 3 columns again? I'm sorry, I wasn't fully
Yeah,
listening.
that's okay. The first column are the advantages and the benefits of my
Okay.
current habit, right? Like if you're online shopping, you mentioned kind of feels good. You feel accomplished and it's kind of exciting in a rush, and you can justify cost savings, right? Those are some really good points. We wouldn't want to lose that. I suspect you wouldn't want to lose that. So that's your first column. The third one, the one on the right, farthest right, is your values, right? I tend to go from that to that because they tend to be, linked together. You
Okay.
wrote, shows that you're resourceful. You value resourcefulness. You can find deals for anything. And it kind of reminds you of growing up as an immigrant and not having much, right? And this is a way where you can kind of give yourself what you need or what you'd like, right? It's a way of taking care of yourself, I would even say. Um, and it's kind of nice to have cool stuff.
It is. And thank you for starting with that. And I know, just so people know, we did do a little prep ahead of time, so you have, and we know each other, so we've talked a little bit, so you know a little bit more than just what I said during this part. And I love how we're starting off with, like, why it's good, because I don't want to feel shamed. And so it does feel good to do this, and I do feel a sense of purpose and accomplishment. So those are definitely advantages. And I think what good it says about me and my values is, yeah, I agree. I'm very proud of my immigrant heritage, and it was a way of us being able to have stuff when we didn't have a lot and feel like we were just like everyone else. And it's made me very resourceful. So I don't want to lose any of that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I do want some change.
Yeah. I hear you there. I hear you there. Absolutely. Those are wonderful things about you. Do we have time for the middle column, or what do you think here?
Yeah, let's do the middle column, and then
And
how
then
about
we'll
you take us
pause.
through after the middle column, like, well, what next? Like,
What next?
what do we do with these three columns?
Totally. Okay, so the middle column is the disadvantages of change. So this would not be the disadvantages of online shopping. We tend to think that way when we're doing a cost benefit. This is actually what is the work that's going to require of you to change this. What are you going to have to do to start this up or to stop it, right? Remember, I was talking about that habits. To shift them, we need to kind of endure, discomfort, right? We have to deprive ourselves of something that feels good. We got to say no, right? And we might need to be disciplined, like keep doing it again and again. So I guess what would be disadvantages of changing this up for
Well,
you?
I know this one right away. And thank you for pointing out that we are talking about disadvantages of change and not online shopping
Yeah.
habit.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, I mean, honestly, as I'm thinking about this,
Yeah.
the biggest thing is really just that feeling, honestly. Because I
Yeah.
don't need half the shit I get, and I don't need to be spending a lot of time on it, and yet it feels good. So the
Yeah.
disadvantage of the change is honestly just losing out on that feeling of like that rush.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a habit and an addiction because I want that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like that excitement, right? That rush,
It is
that it
exciting.
it
Yes.
is. It
I
is.
know. That's
It
the
just
deal.
reward.
Just received something in the mail yesterday. So
It
yes,
is. It is
that's
so fun.
something, and I think that is the primary disadvantage. It's really just that feeling.
Sure. Okay. Well, great. That helps me a lot. Now I'm going to tie this all together and then ask you a really important question. Okay. And we'll
Okay.
end with that. So, given what you're saying, Alan, I think it makes a lot of sense why you are kind of allowing yourself to have, unlimited time to do the online shopping and kind of peruse as you wish, right? Because it does allow you to sort of feel good in the moment and kind of accomplish too. It is exciting. It's a rush. You're also, getting the advantages of cost savings, and this connects to your values of resourcefulness, your experience growing up as an immigrant. It's kind of a way of really kind of rewarding yourself, taking care of yourself, and it's nice to have some small luxury items, and it feels good, and you're enjoying these items too, right? You're not, just buying it, right? And plus, to give up this habit or even reduce it, you might lose some of that excitement, that rush you get when you go and you kind of click purchase now or buy now or whatever, right? Given all these good reasons, that you'd have to convince me why you would want to change this, why you would even want to, you know, reduce it or give it up, or, what do I don't know. I see a lot of good things it shows about you.
Oh, oh, you're making me sell you on this. My gosh, I thought you
Yeah.
were my therapist. Okay, not my therapist. um, okay. No, well, okay. I know what you're doing. I feel like you're doing a Jedi mind trick, but I'm not gonna fall for it. Uh,
Thanks.
I do want change
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, I value my time and my connection with my family and my other activities, which is what I would do with my time, more than that feeling. And I know that feeling when I've been able to deprive myself, it goes away. It's like all things, it just feels bad for the moment when you think about it, right? And you get a trigger or whatever. And in the short term, I know it feels good, but in the long term, I much value just having stronger relationships and doing other things that are a bit healthier than looking online and just getting more like crap that will destroy our environment.
Well, you've convinced me. Hands down, that was amazing, right? I mean, I'm convinced, right? I love what you just did here, and I'm going to point out what you did. You became the voice of resistance. You spoke back against resistance, because if I would have just started handing you tools, oh, do this, Ellen, you can put, blocks on this account or that, you might yes but me. Well, yeah, but what if I really do need to buy something? or sometimes I need a flight, and those things kind of, you do need to get those alerts because there's days that are better. I don't know. Right. And so what you did is you became the voice of change. You were convincing, you were talking back to the resistance, and you're also connecting it with other values that are important, which you mentioned are time, connection with your family, and being present in those interactions. And those are meaningful for you too. Um, so yeah, I think that was great. The next step we would do, if we had more time, we would look into getting this going. Maybe what would you like to do instead of online shopping, or when is a specific time you'd want to shut that down? You would kind of identify that as your next place to move towards. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yes. And I don't have to memorize that because you're going to take me through the next time. And so
Sure.
let's do a quick little summary just so that this
Mm-hmm.
can be useful for the people that are watching or listening. So it sounds like what Rose expert who took me through this and actually did make me feel a little better, and I do feel more committed in the change now, is that we talked about habits and addictions today and about why this is happening in the first place. You identified the biological link, which is dopamine, and how it's natural, and yet it's very difficult sometimes when we deprive ourselves of dopamine, which we must do in this society, and delaying gratification. And if we are to work in the problem, it sounds like the first step is really deep diving and exploring the problem, understanding the details of it and understanding what we're actually trying to work at. And you identified a really, really good way of looking at the problem, which is this piece of paper with 3 columns, and helping us both understand the problem and understanding the motivation of why we want to change. And putting 3 columns of assessing the advantages of the habit and identifying the values or the good that comes that the habit might bring us. And then finally, really thinking long and hard about the disadvantages of not the habit, but of making the change. And so it sounds like those are the 3 central things that we have to do to
Yeah.
really determine whether or not we have a voice of resistance or maybe a voice of complacency.
Yeah. It's really a
Did I
decision
summarize
making
that
moment.
correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Awesome.
that was just awesome for me. Thank
Oh,
you very
good.
much, Rose.
Good.
And
I had
again,
so
you
much
can look
fun.
for Rose. Rose, actually, why don't you tell people where they can find you if they're interested in
Oh,
working with
yeah. My website is www.getbetterthoughts.com, and my email is rose@getbetterthoughts.com. And you can learn more about what I do there and my practice. Yeah, I'd welcome any kind of questions or comments for sure.
you. Okay. Thank you very much, Rose. And we will stay tuned and we will be back again and taking us through the next steps, which is a lot. And the next steps are identifying traps, identifying uh, different smart goals that we can do
The course of
and other
action. Yeah.
tools. So, of
Yeah,
course,
I would
back.
guide you through like the course of action would be the next place. So I'd love to hear about how this has impacted you next time and kind of dive into that if you still want to. If you still
I
want
do
to.
actually, and I'm gonna sit with this fear of possibly not having my little
Oh,
hit of dopamine.
I
Thank
know.
you
I
very much,
know.
Rose.
Of course. Thank you for your time. You are wonderful, amazing. You're so great, Alan. Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you here today.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
This is Elizabeth again. Thanks for listening. We do hope that you received some good information today, or maybe even some tricks and tools that you take away and can help you have a more balanced lifestyle. Until our next podcast, take good care. If you'd like to contact us, you can send an email to office@eastbayanxiety.com or our website, eastbayanxiety.com. Thanks very much. Bye.